One, two, three, four. I want a tariff war. That's right. You heard me right. You know why I want a tariff war? Because I'm sick and tired of industrialization being overseas and our middle class and our young people not being able to afford a damn house, build cars, have steel plants. It's time we bring all that back, and that's what these tariff wars are going to do. And guess what? We're going to tell you how by inviting one of the top young economists out there, Mr. Bryce Gill, onto the show today. This is the David Rutherford Show. A tariff is a tax or duty imposed by a government on goods and services that are imported into or exported out of a country. It's typically used to regulate international trade, either by raising the price of imported goods to protect domestic industries or by generating revenue for the government. There are two main types: a fixed tariff, a set amount per unit, like $5 per barrel of oil, and an ad valorem tariff, a percentage of the value, like 10% of a car's price. Guess what? It's time to get America back on top, and tariffs is going to be the way we do it. Now, what you have to understand before everybody loses their mind on a regular basis, that seems to be, happening all over the place, even to the point where the crazies are out there trying to burn vehicles of the most productive American car company that we've ever known. Let's just not even talk about that at all. What we do need to talk about are, where are the middle class jobs? Seriously. I want you to tell us where the middle class jobs have gone. I want you to post it below on this segment of the show. I want you to post it anywhere you can. You tell me in detail when the American might of industrialization and production, when that went away. Now, I have a pretty good idea. I believe that the post-World War II generation, the greatest generation of all time, after they went over to Europe and to the Pacific theater and kicked some ass, what happened? They came home, they went back to their factory jobs, and what they do? They built this damn country into being the most significantly productive country on the planet. How? We built cars. We manufactured steel. We mined. We developed oil. We developed all different types of small businesses, right? That's what we did, and that's what made America great. Well, fast forward, seems somewhere around the late 1960s and early 1970s, and old Tricky Dick decided to go over to China and open up China's economy, probably in the midst of one of the greatest tyrannical rules of all time in Mao Zedong. Some people say it's 40 million people. Some people say it's 100 million people that were annihilated because of communism. Well, that makes sense. Let's make them our future global industrialized country, right? Again, once more in the American history, we seem to have this bizarre relationship and desire to want to partner with the complete and utter antithesis of capitalism, and i.e. communism. Many people don't even know that in the 1920s and 30s, American manufacturing giants went over to Russia and helped them reindustrialize after the Bolshevik Revolution even. And then even leading up to World War II, all different types of relationships in America. In fact, there's a beautiful book out there called Stalin's War that describes in detail many hidden communists operating within the United States government, right? So again, this bizarre relationship with communist countries. Well, obviously in the 1980s, what we decided to do, we decided to begin to offshore our factory jobs, which under the Clinton administration seemed to explode even more after the fall of Russia. There's a lot of brilliant guys out there who talk about this transition. One of them is Jeffrey Sachs. I think he's a brilliant guy. And because he was there, I mean, he was on the ground in Russia when they approached him and said, hey, help us reindustrialize this nation out of the USSR into the modern Russian economy and country, wanting their desire to join in capitalism internationally. Well, around those same times, what we became the world #1 empire, and what we do, we accelerated the de-evolution of American prowess and might at home. That's right. Think of all the people in your life, in particular, if you were from the Midwest or from the Southern region that was responsible, or even from the Northeast, where we had these, profound manufacturing capabilities. Well, guess what? All those places went away. Think of Flint, Michigan, right? Think of this beautiful little town that was so integrated into the car industry, has been utterly devastated, down to the point where they're poisoning their own people out of malfeasance and mismanagement, right? That's what happens when you attack the middle class. That's what happens when you attack the very people that built this nation. And so what do we need to do? We need to re-employ the next generation, right? The greatest generation is pretty much passing away. Their children, the baby boomers, are on average, in their late 60s and mid 70s. They are no longer working, although many of them, because of inflation, have had to go back to work because whatever their money they're making on a broken social security system is forcing them back into the workforce. It drives me absolutely nuts to think about grandma and grandpa having to be Walmart greeters because their pension funds aren't paying them enough. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to be like, Rut, Ann Holt, buddy. These damn tariffs are whacking the hell out of the markets. They're destroying these pension funds. They're not these fixed income accounts, all this. It's destroying it. Listen, I'm going to tell you, guess what? We were almost 20-some% higher than the lows that we were in 21, 22 in the markets, right? 22 is an absolute calamity in the markets, right? But that came back. So are we off on the bottoms? Nowhere near. We're still way up. And also, if you're not familiar with the markets over the history of highs and lows based on these different economic cycles, well, then stand by, because today's guest is going to be absolutely informative, not only about the tariff situation, but also with what's going on with the history of the markets, right? My point I want you to understand, and what today's episode on the David Rutherford Show is designed to do, is to educate you in a more common sense approach, right? That's what we're here to do on this show. Is my job is to be a flashbang of truth for you, to help give you a common sense approach, to ignite critical thinking so you can better understand what's going on in the world's issues. My mission: I want to get the middle class back to work. I want to reindustrialize American might and prowess. And I believe President Trump is doing that. Now, we live in this, scroll through world. And so everybody wants it to happen yesterday. We're not even at 100 damn days yet. So slow your roll, stand by, and get ready for who I believe is one of the best young economists that's out there in the world, Mr. Bryce Gill. So stand by, because he's coming on the show. Hoo-yah. Do you like it hot? Well, if you're anything like me, you do. And I'll tell you what, if you want to make it hot and you're tired of Tabasco, Cholula, and all the other stuff out there, then what I recommend is Firecracker Farms. That's right, Firecracker Farms is one of my best friend Alex's, his company. It's a family-owned small business. And what they produce is hot salt, right? They have these beautiful stainless steel salt shakers that grinds it right up. You can adjust the coarseness of it. And man, I put that stuff on my eggs every single morning. I put it on my steak when I eat it. I put on all the different carnivore stuff that I love to consume. And you know what? It makes it epic, man. And you know why it makes it epic? It makes it epic because of the ingredients that he grows right on his own farm. Now, he's got these three these three peppers he calls the three kings, right? That's the ghost pepper, right? You always see those crazy ass challenges with those dudes eating the full ghost peppers and they turn red and they defecate in their pants because they can't hold it. That's disgusting. I'm sorry about that one. Reaper peppers, right? And scorpion peppers. And what he does is he takes these things and he integrates them into the salt, and it creates probably, is salt a condiment? I don't know. I guess it is. Yeah, sure. It's a condiment. No, it's a spice. My bad. This is the best spice, the best hot spice you're ever going to find on the market at Firecracker.farm. Now, once again, this is a family-owned business, and you've probably seen Alex in his business on the Joe Rogan show, my best friend, the Sean Ryan show. He's been on Black Rifle Coffee podcast with Evan, another close friend. And what he talks about, man, is that he's got all these levels of heat, and he's got this great heat metric barometer, right? And it's called, top one is normalized violence. I love that. The other one's snake eater. Dig that one. Apocalypto. Man, one of the greatest movies all time, right? Hotter stuff. He's got Three Kings hot salt. He's got Firecracker Farm Pineapple Express, which is like a grenade, and we love that, right? We're the flashbang of truth. I'm the hand grenade of positivity, right? Lambo Lemon Drop and the Mermaid Mustache, and those are the tiers of heat. So if you're looking to spice up your daily meal, your daily carnivore diet, man, go check out Firecracker.farm. Check out my buddy Alex's company, and if you put in RUT, R-U-T, Romeo Uniform Tango, for all those phonetic crazies out there like me, if you put in RUT 15, you're going to get 15% off your purchase, right? That's RUT 15 at Firecracker.farm. We can't thank you enough, Alex, for your sponsoring us, man. Love you, brother. That's it. Welcome to the David Rutherford Show. Man, have I got a big one for you today, man. You want to talk about tariff wars? You want to talk about the war in the economy? You want to talk about war in elites? Well, guess what? Today, I am bringing on one of the best dudes I've ever met in my life, Bryce Gill, who's one of the top economists for one of the biggest asset management firms in the country, in the world. But my favorite part about Bryce is the fact that he's a guerrilla gun maker, and he's the man that I go to when I'm looking at what next gun build I need to have, what subgun's the coolest, what suppressor I have. And Jordan, man, if before we get him on, can you just play that video for us real quick, brother?
Giddy
up.
Making me look good.
Ladies and gentlemen, the handlebar economist himself, Bryce Gill. What's up, brother?
What's up, Dave? This is so fun, man. I'm so glad to be with you here today, and we couldn't have picked a better time to do it. I mean, the world is going crazy, and people, I think, need a little perspective on what's going on. So,
well, that's why you're here. So let's not dilly-dally, man. Let's jump right in. So let me ask you this. Is this Trump waging war against our adversaries from a national security perspective, of a global economy reset? Or is this really what I believe it is, which is Trump waging war for the average dude, the person that works hard, the guy that doesn't have a huge market portfolio or giant, real estate portfolio, and he's waging war for that dude against the elites in the world? What do you think?
Man, I think it's kind of both, to be honest with you. So when you think about tariffs and trade barriers and globalization and everything else, a lot of this starts in World War I and World War II, especially post World War II. When you think about it, we're the only ones that didn't get bombed, right, Dave? So we're basically the monopoly producers and exporters of everything after World War II. And we had a huge incentive to push an idea of free trade, right? We wanted everybody to lower their tariff barriers. We wanted to integrate the global community in trade because, hey, when goods don't cross borders, soldiers will, as Friedrich Bastiat, one of my favorite economists, always said. And so, hey, we pushed free trade. We integrated the world in commerce. The United States was the monopoly producer and exporter of everything. And, giving basically access to our consumer market in the United States, it was a way to get countries on our side in the Cold War as well, right? Choose the United States, you get to sell to the richest people in the world. Choose the Soviets, we're locking you out. And so over time, hey, trade barriers fall. We, integrate the global community. But where things really started to get crazy, I think, and start affecting basically the middle class or normal people in the United States was after the fall of the Soviet Union. Then 10 years after that, China joins the WTO. When you think about it, big picture, like America got access to all this cheap labor and materials in a really short period of time. We had the internet, we had container shipping to arbitrage it all. Mm-hmm. And so this is the period like 1990 to let's say 2020, where globalization goes into overdrive. We're basically outsourcing all our industrial capacity to the rest of the world. The idea in like maybe elite circles was, hey, let's take advantage of all this cheap labor. We'll build up like the middle classes abroad at the expense of our own middle class. And it's great for us. It's great for our profits. And hey, we'll give people cheap consumer goods kind of on the other end. That was sort of the deal. And at the time, remember, it's like the unipolar moment, right? There's no other major superpower to confront the United States. So this felt like kind of a safe thing to do. So not only do we outsource a lot of our manufacturing and things like electronics or automobiles or whatever, we also outsource manufacture of like the entire defense industrial base, right?
Wow.
And so I think now it's a reverse of this, right? Like 30 years, the middle class has had to compete with somebody in China making 10% as much an hour. Their wages really haven't grown because of this. And on top of that, COVID exposed huge geopolitical risks in our supply chains.
Yep.
And so now I think basically both of these are playing in here. On one hand, you've got a lot of people that are worried about national security that want to bring certain critical industries back to the United States. And certainly a huge part of Donald Trump's base was people voting for him as like a backlash against globalization or elites, essentially, shipping our industrial base overseas, profiting from it at the expense of domestic labor. So it all sort of ties together, to be honest. And it's a really interesting and basically long running story for the United States as a superpower.
I love how you frame the context that this is, this has been manufactured as a result of our own policy, right? I mean, I think, really giving people, and especially younger people, young men out there that are trying to find, where am I going to find my next job? Because for the last 15 years, everybody's been like, oh, learn to code. Well, guess what? AI is going to destroy.
The first one's getting taken out. Right?
They're out. They're gone. And so it's like, all right, well, what do I do? And if you pay attention to one of my favorite people on the planet, Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe, with close to 750,000 available jobs with HVACs, plumbers, the whole thing. It's like, yeah, but we also need that ability for these people to compete in all those different places, right? To be able to, begin their own businesses so that they can accrue some wealth and get in the markets potentially. But I also know that, and based on just listening to you for the last 3 years, is COVID really reset this in a way I think people don't quite understand, and the necessity of it, right? With the exposure of the supply chain issues. But more importantly, from what I understand, is that $1.7 trillion infusion of money flooding into our system. How does that radical shift in the M2 number? How does that get us to a place where maybe the markets were going to reset anyways, and that this whole focus on tariffs might not be as well founded as a lot of, the pundits are making us believe.
Yeah. So we just went through the worst inflation in 40 years in the United States. And I just think it's, as an issue, been massively overcomplicated since the COVID pandemic. Inflation is really pretty simple. At the end of the day, it's just too much money chasing too few goods. And so during COVID, we printed $5 trillion and then we shut down the global production system, right? There's just fewer goods and more dollars. So it's the most textbook example of what would cause a surge in inflation in the United States. Since then, inflation's improved a lot. It's because we stopped printing money and we reopened the economy, right? So it's pretty simple stuff. But with regards to like the market correction we're having, headed into this year, I work at a company called First Trust. We're like the only ones calling for a market correction on anyone on Wall Street. I'm sure a lot of people have changed their forecasts now. But, profits and interest rates are what drive the market and market valuations over time. And so we went from being bullish on the market since like 08, 09 to changing our tune. And it's really just because interest rates rose so much. And interest rates rose a lot because we had the highest inflation in 40 years and the Fed had to respond, right? And so COVID certainly reset a lot of things. It reset not only the economy, right, with all the reshoring, it changed the status quo around globalization. It also changed, I guess, a lot of preconceived notions about the stock market. And there was this idea, Dave, called the Fed put that has existed for the past 30 years when we had a bond bull market, which means interest rates were falling since the early 1980s, that anytime there was a problem in the economy or in the stock market, the Federal Reserve would come in and cut interest rates and save the day, right? And now the problem is, hey, they caused the worst inflation in 40 years. They basically have to sit on the sidelines now. They're not going to be able to come to the rescue anymore. And I think still a lot of investors, and I travel around the country talking to investors every day, a lot of investors had not been able to, essentially integrate this into their mindset that the Fed's not coming to rescue you. It's just kind of, hey, that's why we're in the Wild West. That's why we have all this volatility happening. We got to figure out our issues with the government budget. We got to figure out inflation. We got to figure out supply chains. And, we can't just print money to solve our issues anymore.
That's fascinating. Okay, so there's a market correction that you all been predicting for a while, right? And because those 7 tech companies, they can't continue carrying us.
Right.
But is it the idea, do you believe that the idea with Trump and the administration is that if we put these tariffs out there on the global economy, we give our producers of goods and a much greater opportunity to get back in the game, to get back in the fight. And then also I just read yesterday that he's brought in $7 trillion of investment. I mean, I think somebody in the Middle East has committed $1 trillion. Now that's all commitments. That's all like a lot of like, hey, look at me on TV. We're behind Trump because we either don't want to get bombed or we want to work with him, and it's like, all right, is this the push that you believe is feasible, that this will take place eventually? Or could it cause some more catastrophic outcomes?
Yeah, so I'll touch on the tariffs in a second, but I'll just say like reshoring to the United States, I think is happening regardless of if we have tariffs or not. Okay, I think tariffs obviously incentivize it to happen faster. But the reality is, COVID hits. Okay, it makes everybody question the status quo around globalization. It was sort of a Republican issue or like a MAGA issue until COVID hit. And then nobody could buy toilet paper and baby formula. And now everybody agrees, hey, this is a problem. It's a very bipartisan issue. We passed the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, to incentivize reshoring under Joe Biden. Okay, factory construction has tripled in 2 years in the United States. So this is concretely happening in a very fast way. And so some people, I think, still look at this as like, hey, it's government policy or it's just like a response to COVID. And what I really try to emphasize to people and why I've been talking about this since 2016 is just we went abroad in globalization. Part of it, right, is, world peace or the American empire or fighting the Soviets or whatever. But a huge part of this, Dave,
I love how you just brush over that.
Yeah, we can touch on all that if you want, but
not this one. No, I get you on in a week or two, and we'll dig into that, right?
So, but really, the huge thing and here's the thing: there's always rhetoric. There's always a nice story we paint as a veneer on top of our economic interest a lot of times, right? So, I think the reality is the economic interest behind globalization for the United States was an abundance of cheap labor, right, all over the world, and the reality is, if you look at demographics globally, demographics are peaking basically everywhere, right? China's population is going to fall by 40% through the end of the century.
Wow.
South Korea is going to be 90% of the South Koreans are going to be gone by, 2100 or something.
That's crazy.
Same thing in Eastern Europe, same thing in Vietnam, same thing in all these places. Right. And so what I would just emphasize to people, and we'll talk about tariffs in a second, is just the cheap labor is going away no matter what. Okay. And so if the supply goes down, the price goes up. And so it doesn't make sense to make things in China anymore. That's the real issue. And in a lot of other places. And so the United States, we consume everything for the whole world. And we're looking at this and saying, if we don't get the cheap labor out of it, like, what's even the point of this deal? We can just make it ourselves. Right. And so reshoring is going to continue to happen no matter what, in my opinion, because the cheap labor is going away. Now, I think
that's cool.
The tariffs, okay, or like the government policy around this is an effort to basically get out front of this trend and kind of control it from the front instead of kind of getting pulled along from behind by like the broader macroeconomic trend of peaking demographics. Okay. So tariffs, what they do, you just tax stuff at the border as it gets imported. And by doing that, you make it artificially more expensive. And so say like, the U.S. Defense Department wants to put semiconductors in its like drones or Hellfire missiles or whatever. And they're looking at who's an option. Maybe Intel will sell you that chip for $50 and maybe TSMC will sell it to you for $40. If you tariff the semiconductor at the border at 25%, now they're the exact same price domestically for the Defense Department to buy. They're probably going to go with the American maker Intel instead. Or TSMC could say, hey, the Defense Department's a pretty important client for us. Maybe we should just build a factory in the United States. And that way you don't have to worry about the tariffs anyway. And so the reality is here, guys, is like we have the huge domestic market. We buy everything from the entire world, basically. And so we can throw our weight around a little bit here and say, hey, we want more stuff made in the United States. I don't think it's the end of the world. It's interesting you mention all these like investment commitments, Dave, because I was just on my Bloomberg terminal this morning. And there's a bunch of economists talking about, hey, this tariff war is going to cause like a global recession. And I wouldn't be surprised if it hurts China, right? Or it hurts like Malaysia or something. It probably will, frankly. But the reality is, they're saying, hey, companies are going to pull back investment because of uncertainty in the United States. And I would just really question that assumption because the reality is, again, factory construction has tripled in 2 years in the United States. You have now $6 trillion or whatever of committed investment from different people. It hasn't been spent. I get it. You're right. A lot of it is PR, but like, it looks to me like the tariffs are causing a huge wave of investment by basically every observable metric. So I would be very skeptical of claims that, hey, we're about to go into recession because of tariffs in the United States.
I love that. Thank you for saying that. Now, the one thing that not obviously, but the thing that kind of like, the fact that we've been at the precipice of a bear market for a while, it's like, okay, who's going to get hurt by that, right? And the people that I think for me that I worry most about are the people that are in all those state pension funds, those federal pension funds. What do you say to them with these market fluctuations? What do you say to them in terms of whether they're freaking out? Because a lot of these people are obviously on fixed income. They're not sure, these investments are the way with which they live. What are you going to say to reassure these people that, hey, this is a relatively short-term thing in terms of the over that? I love the one chart that you guys always show is about, how long recessions actually last, the impact they have. What advice do you give to those people that, have their entire net worth in these pension funds?
Yeah, and we can touch on recession if you want to in a second, because personally, I don't think we're going to have a recession, but certainly the market has had a correction here. Okay, I think we're down, like on the S&P 500, we're down 12 or 13% from the peak. Okay, and so, guys, honestly, I mean, if you just look at some of the math on corrections in the stock market, this doesn't look that scary, just to be honest. Okay. We get a 10% correction in the United States, like every 8 months. We get like a 15% correction in the stock market every, I think, 16 months. We get a 20% correction basically every 3 years. If you look at like the last 100 years of the stock market, right? So I don't look at what's happening right now as really anything outside the ordinary. Again, I think we came into this year overvalued on the stock market just based on profits and interest rates. And so I was sort of expecting a correction. Now, tariffs have added uncertainty and they've kind of been a catalyst 100%. But when I look at like the fundamentals of the U.S. economy, I don't see like any of the 500 wealthiest, companies in the country going out of business because of tariffs, right? So, and like the earnings picture, I think the stock market's earnings are going to go up this year still. So there might be some margin pressure from labor or tariffs or whatever, but big picture here, I think this is a stock market correction. I don't think this is the end of the world. I think the problem, Dave, is we all have smartphones in our pockets, and the media ecosystem, and by the way, we're on a podcast, it's long form. This is an effort to combat like the disease of short form information. Okay. But to get eyeballs, you basically present negative information because it's 10 times, as effective at getting eyeballs as positive information. You make things as dramatic as possible. And so, hey, stock market correction, Trump tariffs, end of the world. Like, I don't know. I personally think we're not going to be talking about the stock market in like 6 months. I think this is just kind of Donald Trump's back in office. A correction's happened. This is not outside like empirically normal behavior in the stock market at all.
Awesome. Well, I mean, that answers a lot of the other questions that I was having. Is obviously your beliefs, it's not going to have a dramatic effect on the U.S. economy, but you did mention the effect on China, some other Southeast Asian countries. Could this affect European Union? Could it affect the BRICS countries? I mean, how is it going to impact them?
Yeah. So I guess first I'll start out by just saying, like, let me contrast the United States with some of these other places quick. Okay. Because the reality is we have a very self-sufficient economy already in terms of like overall economic activity. Back in like the 1800s or in World War I or whatever, we're an agricultural economy and an industrial economy. We basically depend on exports for a lot of our GDP, right? We make stuff and ship it around the world. Today, like 70% of the U.S. economy is services. It's me getting on a podcast with you, somebody giving me accounting advice, me buying software, those types of, getting a haircut. That's 70% of consumer spending. So only 30% of consumer spending is goods at all. And only a third of those goods are actually imported goods. And so we're talking about 10% of consumer spending that's actually directly affected by tariffs. And by the way, like, I don't think most people know 30% of our imports are from Canada and Mexico. Even though we've talked about 25% tariffs on all of them, and there's been all this debate around Canada and Mexico, like the vast majority of what they import to the United States comes in duty-free because of USMCA. We're not actually tariffing very much from Canada and Mexico right now, which I don't think people even know that.
Bryce,
USMCA is renegotiated NAFTA. Okay. Remember, we did it in Donald Trump's first term in office.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So, if you look at it, like literally 7% of like consumer spending is actually affected by tariffs right now. So it's pretty small. The best estimates, I like to look at the Tax Foundation. They're a very anti-tax, anti-tariff think tank, by the way. I'm not cherry picking things. They say the tariffs that have been instituted will have a negative 0.8% impact on GDP.
Wow.
So not even a 1% decline.
That's crazy.
COVID was minus 10%. The 08-09 financial crisis was minus 5% to GDP. So we're talking a fraction of those things. And again, I think they're modeling a worst case scenario that does not include a huge boom in investment because of the tariffs. Okay. So I'll start out there and say we're just not really that dependent on foreign trade for the overall economy. Okay. When you contrast that with like China, for example, or Germany, for example, or say like Vietnam or Malaysia, those economies, or Japan, those economies are very export dependent. They produce a lot and export it, and then they have a very high savings rate. They don't actually consume all that they produce, right? Whereas we're the opposite. We have a high consumption rate and a low savings rate, and we buy from the rest of the world. So if we just start making more for ourselves.
That's all those late night Amazon purchases, right?
Yeah, which are about to get a lot more expensive, by the way. Like, you look at the total tariff on China is like 60% right now, which is
my gosh,
insane. But, the big picture is, they need to export to us because we're the ones that buy everything. And so what is Germany going to do? What's China going to do? What's Japan going to do if they lose their biggest export market? Basically, they got to start making more stuff for their own people, and people actually have to go out and spend money there. And you get a little like more balanced economy. So I think that's what China has to do here. They just got to like actually make things for their own people and boost their own people's like standard of living. And that's been talked about for years, and they just haven't been able to do it. So,
this sounds like actually, obviously, the way I kind of view the world is through a geostrategic mindset, right? Just from my background, this actually sounds like it could be a very positive impact on gaining a greater leverage against China as it relates to all the little, the little chirping we hear out there about a war in Taiwan and semiconductors and all this stuff. I mean, this sounds like we can gain a pretty significant amount of leverage against China, especially with the fact that, their economy, if I'm not mistaken, is not great anyways, correct?
Well, yeah. So China, their economy grew 10% a year for decades, right? Because one, their demographics were booming. There's a lot more people every year. And two, they just imported technology from the rest of the world. Maybe that's like a polite way to say it, right? They stole a lot of technology too, right? So the combination of that makes GDP boom. You go from like an ox-drawn carriage to like a John Deere tractor in your field. You didn't have to invent that. You just import it from the rest of the world, right? And so the problem China has now is, okay, all of a sudden now their demographics have peaked and started to decline because of the one-child policy and a bunch of other stuff that goes into like the nitty-gritty of demographics. But on top of that, they're in a trade war with like basically the whole world. Okay, so the U.S. tariffs, I know this is like in the news right now, okay, but China's just been in a giant trade war with Europe in the past year. Europe put 100% tariff on Chinese electric cars.
Wow.
Okay, so they're losing export markets everywhere. Basically, everyone's saying, hey, we don't want to export like our high technology stuff to China anymore because we don't trust them. And so China's getting whacked not only on demographics, but they're getting whacked on technology access too. And so, yeah, their economy's in huge trouble, in my opinion. People might have heard of like the Evergrande real estate collapse. Basically, normal Chinese people don't get access to the stock market. Okay, you got like a bank account or you can buy real estate. That's how you invest. Okay. Mm-hmm. So everybody went out and bought like these condos, or they'd like take out a mortgage for like a building that wasn't even built yet.
The ghost cities, right?
Yeah, the ghost cities. And now everybody over there's looking around and saying there's going to be 40% less people in like 60 years. Who am I supposed to sell this condo to? Right. So what's happening is all the real estate values are crashing. It's like 2008, 2009 on steroids over there. So China's in huge trouble. They've got a lot of problems.
Wow. That's now, I think, that's the context that most people are, as you said, whether it's your, how fast you're screaming through X right now, to be able to stop and give this some context is significant. And that's why I love listening to you as much as I do, dude. You have that breadth of knowledge. So, all right, the last question for this segment, and obviously we're going to have additional segments if for those who want to, follow us on Patreon and some other places, but for this segment right now, what I really want to do is kind of end with, taking the opposing side for you for a second and really say, all right, Bryce, you're advising European Union leaders right now. You're advising the IMF, you're advising the BRICS nations, right? What do you tell them on how to evaluate this or how to combat this, or what are you saying to those groups of people right now?
Yeah, I'd say, hey, listen, the Americans have had unilaterally low tariff barriers for a long time. They've really benefited from globalization. We all have. And the reality is when we look out there, a lot of the economic underpinnings of globalization are starting to fall apart. Some of our biggest export markets in the European Union are like Russia and China. Mm-hmm. And we've become reliant on potentially some like geopolitically unstable, sources of income. And so I think we're basically at a point where, hey, it's like America's telling you to choose. It's either you choose China or you choose the West.
Wow.
And so I don't envy Europe for this decision. I mean, they're in a tough place. By the way, they're the middle continent, right? They're between East and West. That's what they've always been. But I think we need to come to some type of agreement with Europe. Maybe it's that they take care of more of their own defense and we make some deals on like, the auto industry tariffs or other kind of non-tariff barriers. But I would advise Europe to probably make a deal with the United States. I think the United States has a lot of natural advantages. I think we have a lot more values in common than Europe does. And given the way like the real world's reshaping, there's like a rising Eastern bloc again. Which side does Europe want to be on? Do they want to be on the side of the United States in the West or on the East? And they'll probably kind of play both sides to some extent. I don't, again, begrudge them for that, given their geographical location. But this is what this tariff announcement by Donald Trump is. It's basically saying, hey, we have our core of North America, USMCA, and now we're going after everybody else and saying, make a choice. It's the United States or it's China. And, you know, Peru, if you want to export all your fruit from the Sacred Valley up to Texas into the grocery stores, then you can't hire China to build all your infrastructure. It's not going to work like that anymore. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Pick a side. So I think people are going to have to pick a side, basically.
This is the greatest news that I think people could hear, right? Is this is finally giving us a little bit more leverage by using our economy, the economic engine of America, which is by far the greatest on the planet. And don't let any of these little squawk boxers over here and over here detract you from that. The reality is we have the greatest economic machine that has ever been created in human history. And this is part of that plan to regain that whole thing. All right. Bryce, man, before I let you go for this part right now is I got to have you give your advice. All right. What's the best sub gun that's out there? And it just describe what makes you happy when you're on the range and you're going big with a sub gun.
Man, the best sub gun out there right now. That's such a good question. I mean, honestly, I just am a sucker for the classics, man. I think I like the MP5K the best of anything. I wish they would like remake it with maybe a bigger magwell funnel and maybe a little bit better ergonomics on the grip and stuff. But anybody that needs like a bolt release on their gun, everything doesn't have to be an AR-15. That's kind of how I feel about it. The aesthetics of the MP5, the ergonomics of the MP5, pulling back the charging handle, locking it in, charging a new mag and doing the slap, it's so enjoyable. So I would vote the MP5K, honestly. I think it's still the best subgun there is.
There's a different level of the tactileness of the MP5, right? Yeah. As well as the accuracy of that son of a bitch, man. It's like my favorite gun I've ever shot as well, too, man. And you just can't beat it in the house for sure.
That's right.
All right, man. Where can people find you? Again, who do you work for? Where can people find you? And just, what do you have coming up in your life right now?
Yeah, so if you want to find my work, I'm an economist at a company called First Trust Portfolios. You can search the First Trust Economics blog. We post everything we write there, which is basically any economic data that comes out. We're writing updates on it. All that stuff is available for free. Everything's one page, easy to read, easy to share. So I think those are a great resource. You can just search my name in Google. I do a lot of interviews like this. They're kind of all over the internet. I've also got an X account as well. It's Daddy Fat Stats. Which, if anybody's an Outcast fan, it's Big Boy, right? Daddy Fat Stacks. But because I look at data, it's Daddy Fat Stats.
Dude, I love you so much. It's not even funny. I'm telling you what.
I love you too, man. It's so fun to do this with you.
Oh, my God. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bryce Gill. Thank you, brother.
Right,
appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hi. I hope you're enjoying the David Rutherford Show. What I want to also inform you about is that we started a Patreon account, right? And this is a way for us to really connect with our followers on a deeper level in a subscription-based arrangement, right? Now, we're setting the entrance bar pretty low at just $2 a month. That's less than, in fact, way less than what you're paying for coffee. Hell, my coffee today was like $8.95. I don't even know what I'm doing, right? But you come in at $2 base entry fee, and what you're going to have access is to not only the whole show, but also the additional stuff. Every single interview we do and much of the other shows, we're going to have an additional content section, which is the spicy stuff. That's the place where I'm in the unhinged rants, where I can truly go off on my feel, so I won't get censored on all the other censorship places out there. And by now, you know what all of them are. And so you'll come there and you'll be able to find all that extra additional content from the show itself. But that's not all. What you're also going to find is you're going to find a lot of really unique kind of core content to what I like to deliver. And that's, you're going to have access to motivational speaking events of mine. I'm going to do live motivational speaking events, as well as Q&A with Patreon subscribers. I'm going to do it every kind of quarter or so. We're also going to begin uploading curriculum there, what I call the Frog Logic Institute curriculum, where you're going to be introduced to many of the core fundamental ideas that I teach in many of my lectures around the country. I probably still give 100 to 125 speaking events a year, and still working with professional sports teams and college teams. This year, I had a great beginning of the year where I got to work with the Penn State athletic department, as well as all of the Penn State student athletes. And in particular, one of my favorites, I got to work with the Penn State men's hockey team, which, by the way, is going to be in the Final Four tomorrow night, and hopefully the final game this weekend. So don't miss them. Hoo-yah, Penn State, we are. So please, we would love to have you join us for just $2 a month on our Patreon account. You can find that at David Rutherford Show. So listen, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Welcome back. Now, if you were like me and you just listened to Bryce Gill, you're blown away, because the data that he shared with us is undeniable. And what it proves is that America still is, and in my estimation, will always be what the benchmark economy of the world is. Well, at least if we can maintain our prowess as not only the most financially sound with our markets and our whatever, but because of the companies that keep America going, because of those companies that set the standard for production, and then also because of the initiative that Trump and his cabinet are going to do with these tariffs, which is to bring back the industrialized might of America. And if we can do that, then guess what? Then you and your wife, you and your friends, you're going to have a well-paying job that delivers a powerful pension, that delivers you opportunity to have the American dream, which is to, have a wife, have children, or have a job that pays you well, that enables you to have a house and a community that's supportive, and really kind of to reshape what the American myth, what we should call now the American myth, back into the actualization of the American dream. And that's possible. And it's possible if you get committed. So I'm blown away. Jordy, what'd you think about Bryce, man? I mean, did he impact you? I mean, you're a young man. Did he get you all fired up on how badass America is?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I just never heard some of the facts that he was talking about. Like, I thought it was interesting him saying that the onshoring there's a wave of onshoring in America that's happening, with the tariffs, without the tariffs. Like, this is just in the country's blood right now. And there's a big movement behind that. And it just kind of shows how important that is. Man, I learned a lot. So.
And I love that's the positive outlook of what happened from COVID. If other than millions of people out there getting red pilled, for sure, the reality is that we've come to the realization that we cannot count on the supply chain from China. And what we are going to do is we're going to count on our own supply chain. We're going to start to build America, right? Made in America is going to be a real thing instead of assembled in America, which drives me nuts, but it is what it is, right? All right. So one of the cool aspects that we really want to do at the end, the final kind of segment or closing segment, and thanks to Jordy being the musician that you are, buddy, we're going to call this the coda section. Now, describe this a little bit more. What is a coda for these folks? And for all you don't know, Jordy is a musician at heart. He's a true artist just like me. So, Jordy, what's a coda?
Well, if I can remember back to my music school education, the coda is the ending section of a musical piece, and it's oftentimes a little bit different than anything else you heard in the in that composition. And so there's the whole piece; it's going through its peaks and valleys, and then it's like a little bonus at the end that they hit you with right before you go. So that's what this section is. I thought it's a good name. Bring back some old school music terms,
Let's go Led Zeppelin. All right, that's just my Gen X right there, and maybe I'll review Led Zeppelin in the future in one of the coda sections. That would be apropos. But in this one, what we want to do is we're going to call it the vintage hard story, right? And what we want to highlight are the people who were those old school people who worked in the steel mills, who built the skyscrapers in New York and Chicago and all over the place that really exemplified the industrial might of the American worker, right? Those are the people, right, with their dirty hands and their bad backs and they're covered in soot from the coal mines. Those are the men of this country that we owe a profound amount of a debt and gratitude because we would not be here without them. Jordy, pull up that one picture of the steel mill there.
Yeah, here you go.
And
boom.
Oh, man. So you look at that and you look at those dudes right there, man. Do you know how hot that furnace was? Do you know how heavy those steel pokers were? Do you realize that those long shifts, 12 hours in a steel mill and what that does to your body, what it does to your focus, how dangerous all that was? But you know what? Those men woke up. They didn't bitch. They didn't complain. They weren't angry because why? Because they were making a good living. They were able to support their families. They were able to send their kids to college, the first kids to ever go to college ever. And those jobs were real jobs that made an impact, that changed America for what it is today. Well, not totally what it is, but what built America, what it's become is a whole nother thing that we'll get into in another coda section. All right. How about my other favorite? Jordy, what was the other one we talked about? That other great one.
This is the classic one right here. The having lunch, dude.
God.
Is that what your lunch break looks like?
Not since military. For sure. But now, I mean, you look at those guys and they're having lunch, what, maybe 500 feet up in the air, and probably a stage photograph, but the representation of what it is. And do you got another one for me of guys actually doing work up there?
Here's them just hanging out up there doing some work.
That's right. I don't see many safety lines, right? I don't see a hard hat. I don't see anything. What I see is just sheer courage and determination, right? To build something out of nothing. And that's what we need. We need people, especially you young folks out there. We need young men out there. We need you to stand up and say, you know what? I need to get my hands dirty. I need to strengthen my back. I need to build something. And if you don't want to go work for anybody out there, a big construction conglomerate managed by some private equity firm that's whatever, then start your own construction company. I mean, I've got a guy who lives across the street from me, my neighbor, who I love dearly, man. This young man is, just 30 years old, and he works 7 days a week, and he works for a local builder, and he's out there managing 14, 15 building projects at his age, and the guy works his butt off. And so that gives me hope. But that's available out there to young people. And you just have to feel the inspiration for taking hold of your future with your bare hands. And that's a powerful thing to do. So if I can just inspire you, man, to go back and sit with those stories of those men and women who built America, in particular those hard men that were on those skyscrapers, that were in those steel mills and in those coal mines and out on those oil platforms, and they're still out there, but their numbers are dwindling. And so, man, if you have any aspiration of being hard and really getting in and making America great again, we need you to roger up and step into the fight, if you will, to step out on that ledge with your toes dangling, with your safety strap and your hard hat on, and to help us build America. All right. That's my thing. Now, if you've enjoyed this show, you enjoyed what we're bringing to you, please don't forget to like the show, right? Make a comment, right? Subscribe to the podcast. Share it with 5 of your friends or 2 of your friends. I don't want to be like one of those lame like threads, man. If you share this thing with 10 of your friends, you're going to make $1 million in 30 days. I can't promise you that, but what I can promise you is that if they're red-blooded Americans, they're going to listen to this, they're going to get fired up, and they're going to feel good about what our future looks like. And that's what we want to do here on this podcast. So like, subscribe. We're available on the entire place, all social media, all the different places you can consume content. You can follow us at David Rutherford Show, and that's on YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, Rumble, TikTok, all the podcast apps, Apple, Spotify, all of them out there. And then if you want to follow the show on X, it's at D Rutherford Show, at D Rutherford Show. It seems some poor sap out there stole the rest of it from me, but that's all right. We'll get it one of these days, hopefully. And if you want to follow me, I'm on all social media platforms. My personal stuff is at Team Frog Logic. That's David Rutherford at Team Frog Logic. All right. Also, too, this is a big one. Listen, we're dependent in independent media. We are dependent on you for much of our for all of our success. But sometimes, and more importantly, we're also dependent upon you to reach out to us and share with us something that's got you fired up. If you've got a news story, you know somebody that's got a story, they can't get it out on regular news channels or on other larger platforms, we're not afraid to take a look at it. Please, if you want to send any news story idea or someone special, an interview, a hero you know, someone who's vintage hard, your grandpa, your uncle, your aunt, something like that, or just some corruption that you've discovered in your school system or at your job or wherever it might be, please, I want you to email Jordy at davidrutherford.com. That's Jordy at davidrutherford.com. And if your story is epic and it's great, we're going to bring you on the show. We're going to interview you. We're going to let you tell your story to our audience in the hope that we can help you and help your endeavors. Also, if there's anything that you'd like me to take a look at out there, do a deep dive in. If you've got recommendations for things you'd like to hear, please do the same. Go ahead and email Jordy. That's Jordy at davidrutherford.com. All right, my man. What do you think, Jordy? Is that it for today?
Good show. Good show. I'm fired up.
Awesome.
Learned a lot. Let's do it again next time.
You got it. All right. Once again, if you want to clear up the tsunami of information out there, then you join me because I'm going to be your flashbang of truth. This is the David Rutherford Show. Hoo-yah.